Hi, this is Andrew Bridgewater, Chartered Psychologist, with a special presentation for World Mental Health Day. And this is a presentation that I've just presented to a large banking organization with 70,000 employees. And they wanted this as a special piece for World Mental Health Day. And a very important subject I want to talk to you about: enhancing your resilience and mental well-being at work. And this is an increasingly important subject. The pace of change is ever increasing. Employees and everybody who works these days is expected to deliver more for less. And therefore, we need to dig deep. We need to find additional resources in our tank to be able to not only survive but thrive in the current work environment. So the other thing I wanted to say is I've just been fortunate enough to have a piece published in Psychologist magazine talking about how to deal with stress, anxiety, and depression in natural ways. And that's very much a theme that's going to find its way into this presentation that I have to share with you. So, what I want to do is just run through the overview of the session. I'm going to talk about what I mean by resilience. What do we mean? So, we get a common definition. I'm going to give you a different perspective on resilience, something you may not have come across before, which I think will give you some different insights and different ways of handling stress, both inside and outside work. I want to share my own personal story because what I have to say today isn't just some highfalutin ideas from a psychologist. These are from my own personal experience, some of it very painful. And I've finally realized 10 or 11 years later from the experience that I'll share with you that it's really important I brought this out and shared my insights and help other people follow a way through when sometimes it feels very difficult when you're in stress. Um, I want to give you some simple lifestyle habits which will help you increase your personal stress threshold and become more resilient. And then I want to talk a little bit more about how our personal psychology works. And then we'll have a brief Q&A session at the end, and I'll show you how to get in touch with me if you want to ask me any question you like on this subject. So please make some notes, and but the most important thing is be ready to take some action from what I'm about to say, because it was very life changing for me what I've come across. And as I say, it was born out of personal experience, some of it very painful. So let's talk about briefly a definition of resilience. This is something that I've worked with as a great definition. Comes from the Harvard Business Review. I haven't made it up. The ability to recover from setbacks, adapt well to change, and keep going in the face of adversity. And as I say, adapting to change is something we all have to handle these days. Life and work are contact sports, so we're always going to have setbacks that we need to recover from, and things always don't go our way, or don't always go our way. Therefore, we need to keep going in the face of challenges and adversity. Um, and as I say, what I want to give you is some extra resources in the tank that will enable you to do those things. Before I do, I've got a question that I want to pose with you. And the reason I'm asking you this question, do you realize that none of your thinking is real, is because it's been a fundamental awakening for me, or it's surrounded a fundamental reawakening for me, because um, I was asked to give a speech at my annual school reunion earlier this year, and it happens to be Shakespeare School, the school where Shakespeare was educated. And I gave the speech in the same room where Shakespeare learned to write hundreds of years ago. And it was a very profound time for me because I used the quote from Shakespeare's Hamlet to open my speech. And I want to read that quote to you because I think it informs what I'm encouraging you to reflect on here. Why then, 'tis none to you, for there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. To me it is a prison. Well, then it isn't one to you, since nothing is really good or bad in itself. It's all what a person thinks about it. So those are the words of Hamlet from Act 2, Scene 2. And Hamlet was a prisoner of his own thinking. And it's clear that Shakespeare knew a thing or two about how to deal with stress and create mental well-being. So, prompted by the words of Shakespeare, I've got this question for you. Do you realize that none of your thinking is real? Now, when I gave this talk on a similar topic at the school reunion, At this point, I then said, just before I came in, I put some post-it slips like these under 4 random chairs in the room. And if there's a post-it slip under your chair, I'm going to ask you to come up and share some humorous lines about your most memorable moments in the school. And you can actually listen to this happening live. If you go to my website at andrewbridgewater.com, there's a short audio piece, which is the talk I gave, and you'll hear people rummaging around under their seats for 10 or 15 seconds. Before I said to them, no, not really, I just wanted you to see that your thoughts create your moment to moment experience of life. So imagine if you'd been in that room and I'd asked you that question. How would you have felt at the time? What thoughts would have gone through your head? And people have lots of different thoughts going through their head, ranging from sort of feeling of slight unease through absolute terror to mild excitement. So those feelings are coming from the individual thoughts they're having. It's the same situation I'm presenting. It's the same circumstance for everybody, but everybody will have a slightly different interpretation of that. No great surprises there, but it really is worth reflecting on. So some people's hearts start beating a little faster at that point. And they start having thoughts about something that wasn't ever going to happen. Even for a short time, they might have experienced those feelings as if they were real and those thoughts were true. So the only reason for our particular reaction to any circumstance or situation in our lives is our personal thinking. And I go so far as to say that we can't experience life other than via our thoughts. Now, this is a huge fundamental realization. It's not a simple play on words. Um, in other words, we're always feeling our thinking and not our circumstances, and we're creating our own version of reality. Yes, we're making it all up moment to moment. And the only times that we suffer psychologically are when we believe that our feelings are coming from something other than our circumstances in the moment. Now, that's a very significant point, as I say, and I'm going to encourage you to reflect on that both now and a little bit later in this session. So, but before I do, I want to give you a little bit of background on why I'm talking about this at this point in time. 11 years ago, I spent 5 weeks in a psychiatric hospital in Warwick with psychotic depression. And psychotic depression is a particular severe form of the condition. Where the sufferer loses contact with reality. And I was imagining all sorts of sights, sounds, tastes, and smells that just weren't real. It was very scary. And the only thing I can liken it to is a living nightmare that went on for many weeks. And it really encouraged me and enabled me to have some insights later on. Obviously, I didn't at the time. But like Hamlet, I became depressed and I became a prisoner of my own thinking. I can be moderately light-hearted about it now, but as I say, it's taken me 11 years to talk about it, and it was quite frankly the lowest point of my life and very humiliating. Um, the process by which I got there was really quite simple with the benefit of hindsight. And it wasn't a psychological experiment. This was my real life, but I repeated a series of negative and self-critical thoughts over and over for several months. You see, at the tail end of 2005, I branched out in my business and I bought an investment property in Cyprus. At the time, the market was booming, but within 3 months, the property market had crashed in spectacular fashion and wiped 25% off the value of the property. I'd taken it with a mortgage, so I was into negative equity. And then the Cyprus pound went into the euro at a very strong rate, and the mortgage payments doubled overnight. I felt like I was shoveling money into a bottomless pit that would never fill up, and that I was going to bankrupt my family. And I beat myself up about it. Sounds crazy now. I suffered because I believed that those feelings I was experiencing, those feelings of disappointment, anger towards myself, anxiety, were coming from that situation, but actually they were coming from my thinking about it. And that's not a trivial point, as I say. And boy, did I suffer. I suffered to the extent, as I say, I created a personal hell on earth. I was on antidepressants with unpleasant side effects for 18 months. And those antidepressants caused me to put on a lot of weight. So there I am in 2007, struggling up a mountain in Ireland, weighing 3.5 stone more than I do now. As I say, the antidepressants had caused me to put on that weight. And then I decided after 18 months on antidepressants, I wasn't going to live like this anymore. I was at the time doing a high pressure corporate training role. So I was traveling all over Europe, staying in hotels, eating too much, not getting enough exercise or relaxation. But then I had a transformation, and I can remember the precise moment when it happened. I just finished a course in London, and I got into a lift at the end of a busy day's training. And this lift had four-way mirrors in it. And if you've ever been in one of those lifts, you'll know that you get a view of yourself you wouldn't already ordinarily get, that other people may see sometimes. And I looked at this image of the fat, stressed out, middle-aged man. I was 44 at the time. And I thought, what on earth is going to become of me? And I made a decision at that point, and the root of the word decision is to cut oneself off from any other possibility. I decided I wasn't going to live like this anymore. I was going to dump the depression, and I was going to dump the excess weight. And so I made it literally my life's work to research everything I could find about how to alleviate stress, anxiety, and depression naturally, because I was tired of the unpleasant side effects of antidepressant medication, as I say, which encouraged me to put that sort of weight on. So on the back of this research and the action that I took on the back of it, which I'm going to share with you now, I lost 50 pounds in weight. I became healthier. I became much more energetic and youthful. And I managed to come off the medication, which was no mean feat after 18 months. I was literally dependent on it. But I came off slowly and gradually. Anybody listening to this who's on medication for stress, depression, anxiety, please don't just make a rash decision and come off. Do it under the guidance of your professional advisor, and make sure that actually you do it sensibly and carefully. Um, and really crucially for me, the negative stress and depression have gone. And actually, I've been able to deal with far bigger challenges than I handled, that I didn't handle in 2006, since, because of the changes that I put in place and because of the understanding I have developed about how personal psychology, how my personal and your personal psychology actually works. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the lifestyle changes, the physical resilience formula, I call this. And my approach is two-pronged. I've got a physical approach, which involves some simple daily lifestyle habits. And I also have this different understanding of our personal psychology that I've alluded to already and will tell you a little bit more about as we go on. So the physical resilience formula is based on, or it's developed on a philosophy called the Slight Edge, which has come from a book called The Slight Edge: Secret to a Successful Life by Jeff Olson. And if you haven't read this book, I really encourage you to read it. It's a very profound and powerful set of insights into how life, from many standpoints, actually works, and reflecting nature and the fact that nature happens in its own inexorable way. And there's a little anecdote in the book that I want to share with you. If I was to ask you, would you rather have £1,000,000 today or a penny doubled in value, compounded for the next 30 days? So it's a penny today, 2p, 4p,